All right, welcome to tier list of every coaster in Theme Park Tycoon 2, Part 2. I'm recording this probably a couple weeks before it gets uploaded, which is why I'm in a completely nondescript park, so that's not obvious, even though I'm literally telling you in the first 2 seconds of the video. Anyway, last time I did this on a website, but that website had a ton of ads, and I just thought it would be fun to build the tier list in-game. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. So let's just get straight into it. First roller coaster, junior coaster. This is one of the newer remodeled coasters. Oh, by the way, I'm only going to be ranking the, what are they called? The newer coasters, not the legacy models. So the junior coaster, it can't really do a lot. It does have a lot of skins, which is pretty neat. But overall, it's a pretty simple coaster. I think I'm just going to put it in A tier. It's useful enough. I'm going to end up using it a lot in my parks because of what it is. And I guess maybe I should go into the criteria for these tiers with that. These are basically just going to be mostly ranked on how often I use them or just how much I enjoy using them. So with that said, we're moving on to the Wild Mouse coaster. This one is an interesting coaster. I think it looks a little weird. Like, I feel like the cars are a little short personally, but it's overall not too bad. It does look pretty nice. I don't use this one very often, though. I think that really it feels like there's only one thing you can do with it, and it's build a Wild Mouse, or I guess build a Dark Ride. So for that reason, I'm just going to be putting it in B tier. And then next up we have the Corkscrew coaster. This is a sort of notoriously bad coaster type in real life, sort of. It's definitely a lot more useful in-game, but it does sort of have that old, it totally has the old Aero Looper look. It looks really good for what it is, and I do use it reasonably often, but it just doesn't do anything too crazy outside of that. I feel like maybe I shouldn't put it lower than the junior coaster, but if I'm putting a thrill coaster in a park, it's going to be something other than this. So I think for now, I'm just going to put it in B tier. And now next up, we have the Steeplechase coaster. This is a pretty unique coaster type. It does exist in real life. I think there's only one remaining, maybe at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. But I'm going to be honest, in this game, I use this approximately never. So it's going in C tier. Up next, we have the infamous Vekoma SLC, or inverted coaster. I basically never build these. These are notoriously bad in real life, even more so than the Aero Loopers. I think I'm just going to put it in C because if I'm building an inverted coaster, it's going to be the B&M, not this one. And now finally, you've got something really good, the multi-launch Instant S tier. Like, I mean, I think most people are going to agree on this. It's one of the most versatile coasters in the game. It looks really good. It's got the look of like newer Intamin or Mach trains, and as well as the track. And, you know, it can launch, and it's, yeah, I think if you've seen like a single time in video, you probably know why this is an S tier. Now moving on to the spinning coaster. This one, it looks really nice. This is based off of the Mar spinning coaster cars. There is also a ride skin that looks like the Gerstlauer spinning coaster cars, which I think is pretty cool. The only thing with this coaster, well, actually, there are two problems I have with it. One, I don't build it very often because trying to get the spinning right is more work than it's usually worth. It is a very cool coaster, but unfortunately, I just don't use it that much. And also, it doesn't have elevator lifts. There are coasters in real life that have elevator lifts of this exact type. Why does this not have an elevator lift? Dennis, please fix. Anyway, I'm going to be putting this one in A tier. And now we have the vertical launch coaster. This used to actually be my favorite coaster type in the game, but yeah, looking at all of these, it does feel a little outdated. So honestly, I haven't used it much since the multi-launch was added, even though the vertical launch aspect of it is pretty cool. I just don't build with it. So at this point, I think I'm going to have to move it all the way down to B tier. Yeah, the phase turbine. I think we all know where this thing goes. Nobody builds this ever. Actually, I did build one recently, only because there was a mission that told me to. Oh, I have my new missions in 14 minutes. I'll do those after this video. But I built one of these and then made it intentionally as bad as possible. The only cool things about this coaster is that it has the lights and that it does the fire when it goes over the boosters. But other than that, this is just the old design of the multi-launch, but rusted, and it just doesn't look that great. The track isn't that great either, and I never use it, ever, aside from if there's a mission. Okay, now with the old flying coaster, this one looks pretty similar to the old invert. Really outdated look. Again, if I'm going to build a flying coaster, I'm going to go with the B&M, but this one is also getting moved down a tier because this could do so well with a new model. Just imagine the Vekoma track fly at Phantasialand. Like, we need this. And once again, a very old coaster model. We've got the inverted launch coaster here. This is in a sort of a similar predicament with a flying coaster, except I basically never used it before. I'm just also going to put this all the way down in B tier. It's just outdated and I never use it. This would also be another great candidate to replace with a new gen Vekoma STC. All right, and now we have the Mine Train coaster. I think actually the first video on my channel to get a ton of views was showing off the Mine Train coaster update. And I also really like what you can do with this. It was one of the first coasters that looks really nice and it has a super unique track piece that's useful in quite a few different ways. I don't build it that often, but I do think I like it more than the ones in B tier. So I think I'm going to put this one up in A tier. And now we got the old Floorless coaster. Once again, pretty much same predicament as some of these other old coasters. It's just outdated. I don't build it really ever. I do like it a little bit more than these two. So I think I'm going to put it in C tier. But again, it's just a coaster that was left over from before the B&M was in the game. Now we've got the motorbike coaster. This one's pretty cool. It's got some really unique looking skins based off of I think either Intamin or Vekoma motorbikes, but I'm not actually 100% sure what the two look like because I've never. That's a lie. I've been on Pony Express at Knott's Berry Farm. Overall, is a pretty cool coaster. I just never build with it. I think this one I like a little bit less than all of these. I'm gonna just still put this in B tier, but it's probably one of the best coasters in B tier. And then we have this thing, the inverted powered dock ride. This isn't really a coaster. Like technically it is, but it's really more of a dark ride, so it feels weird ranking it against these things. I never build it. I think I've built exactly one in my life, literally ever, and I didn't even finish it. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in C tier. It still looks pretty nice. It's not D tier. It's not bad. It does what it needs to do. I just don't find it all that useful, to be honest. Next, we have the single rail coaster. This would 100% be S tier, except for the fact that these are not accurate Raptor trains. I don't know if they're hot racer trains. I don't care if they're hot racer trains. They aren't Raptor trains. This is not what Railblazer looks like. This is lore inaccurate. It would be really, really cool if we could get a skin for this that was an actually more accurate Raptor train. Ideally ATV, because I worked at Blazer for like a year. I mean, just a skin with the one-car Raptor trains would just be really nice. We know it's possible because the wooden coaster exists, but I don't know if we're actually ever going to get that. It'd be really cool to see. That would put it in S tier, but for now, it's just A tier. The Beyond Vertical Drop Coaster. This one is actually kind of hard to rank. It was one of the first sort of modern updated coaster designs. I think it came just maybe one update after the Mine Train. So it looks good, but not quite as good as some of the even newer coasters. I do quite like building with this, but I have done it a little bit less. After going on the Smiler for the second time, I had so many ideas for these things, but then most of them ended up involving elevator lifts, and this thing does not have elevator lifts or drop tracks. Why? Please. I don't think there are any Gerstlauer Infinities that have that, but please. I'm tempted to put this also in A tier out of spite. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm just going to get straight to the point. This is my new favorite coaster in the game. This thing's a straight S tier. I have been on new gen Vekomas for the first time this summer, and even though they weren't like this specific kind, it was only Fly and Rake at Fantasyland. This manufacturer is now like one of my top 3 manufacturers probably. Vekoma is amazing. We need more Vekomas, honestly. Like, just flip this track upside down, add the Vekoma flyer trains to it, and make a skin for the Vekoma STC. Please. It would make the game 12 million times better. We need more Vekomas and not the old terrible Vekomas like this one. Like, this one doesn't count. This one sucks. We need more new gen Vekomas. And honestly, you could just fix it in one ride type that updates the flying coaster or the, what's it called? Inverted launch. Like, please. I might have to extend this tier list. So next up is the Hypercoaster. This one I barely build ever. I have a lot of trouble with the shaping on just airtime hills, which sort of makes me not want to build these. They also feel like they have to be really big and take up a lot of space, which isn't a fault of the coaster. It's just a fault of how they are in real life and how I would want to build them. So I barely ever end up building these. I think I'm going to have to put this in B tier, even though it's good. I definitely like it less and build it less than the majority of the coasters up in A tier. Now we've got the Aero Suspended Swinging Coaster. This one, it's sort of the same idea as the Inverted Powered Dark Ride, but a little bit different. This one's more of a coaster. It's just harder to build, and I don't like it enough as a model to build it, really, ever. Okay, now we're back to the really good ones. We've got the B&M invert, four-seat invert. I always build this over the SLC, mostly because I actually like this coaster type in real life. There are some really good inverts out there. Nemesis, Black Mamba are really good. Flight Deck at my home park is super intense. So I think I'm going to put this one in A tier. I don't build it all that often. I do feel like maybe I need to put a little bit more in S tier, but I'll get to that. Just gotta extend the tier list real quick. Okay, now we've got the floorless coaster. Um, Most recent time I tried building one of these, all my element shaping was horrible. It's not the fault of the ride type. Floorless is fine. It's just, if I'm gonna build this, it's about as frequent as the hypercoaster, or definitely at the very least less than everything in A tier. So I'm gonna put it in B. Again, not a bad model. I definitely like it a lot more than the old floorless. It's the B&M. It looks very nice, but just don't build it that often. Coming right after the floorless, we've got the stand up. Basically, this is going to be the same position as the floorless in real life, does basically the same things, but it's just a little less enjoyable. I never build it, but it's a B&M and it looks pretty nice, so it's going in C tier. And next up, we've got the Mach Extreme Spinner, or really the launch spinning coaster. This one is generally just a better spinning coaster than the one over here, but again, it's a spinning coaster, so I don't build it that often. This one does actually have what's it called? Drop tracks. So that's pretty nice. I feel like this is still going to be A tier. I might end up bumping some of these up, but yeah, I'm going to put this in A tier. Anyway, moving on to the next coaster, we've got the flying coaster. This one, I feel like is probably on the same tier as the Hyper and the Floorless. It's a really nice coaster model. I just build it pretty rarely. Although honestly, I think maybe I should bump some of these up to S tier and some of these up to A. Next, we've got the water coaster. I think I built one of these when the update came out and then completely ignored it again. So this is also going to go down in this tier right here. I feel like generally for me, the splash boats is just going to be the water ride I'm going to pick here because I don't feel like most of the time if I'm making a water ride, I'm making something gentler, not making a water coaster. It's very cool this is in the game and it looks pretty nice. Yeah, don't use it. All right, now we're moving on to some more good ones and I'm again almost out of space. The Dive is a coaster I definitely like. I do build these reasonably often. They are kind of fun. It's basically just making a bunch of implements and drops repeatedly, but I think for this coaster, I'm going to put it in A tier. But then I'm also going to move a bunch of stuff up to S tier, and this might get caught in that move. Okay, I ended up deciding I don't build the Dive nearly enough for it to go to S tier, but definitely these four are sort of the four most likely coasters I am to end up building. Next up, we've got the Wing. This one, I really want to build a wing coaster. I just haven't really built any, so I'm going to have to put this down in B tier, and I'm going to have to make the tier list bigger again. Turns out there's a lot more coasters in this game than I thought. Nearly done though. Next up, we've got the wooden coaster. This one was amazing when it came out. I built so many of them. I feel like I should probably just put this one in S tier because of how many I used to build. And I mean, I still build them fairly often. I just feel like I'm struggling to get them as smooth as some of my other coasters. So I kind of want to move it down, but I think just how much I use it, this is probably an S tier coaster. And one more coaster before we go back to S tier, we've got the hydraulic launch. This one is a pretty decent multi-launch. I was thinking about building one of these as one of the first coasters in my amusement park series. That's not happening. I might build one eventually, but definitely won't have built one by the time this video comes out. I think this gets caught in the I like it, I just don't like it enough to build it very often. I'm going to be honest though, putting so many coasters in B tier feels a little bit harsh when a bunch of these, and specifically the B&Ms, are still really good ride models, and I do like them. I just don't build them very often. Maybe that means my criteria is flawed. But I think no matter what criteria I have, the hybrid's going in S tier. I built that slightly incorrectly. Oh well. These coasters, amazing in real life, and they're pretty fun to build in this game. Sort of the same deal with the wooden coaster, but I build these more often because it's an RMC hybrid. Like, what did you expect? And finally, we have the 4D coaster. This one, to be honest, is somewhere in the middle. It's a really cool ride model, but it's really hard to build. And because of that, I've never actually gone and fully built one of these. I've been on X2 at Magic Mountain exactly one time. It was definitely a ride. But I just don't remember it or know it well enough to really want to build a million of these. I kind of want to put this in B tier, but I kind of want to just put it in C tier just because I don't build it, even though it is pretty cool. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to put this one in C tier, even though it is such a cool and unique coaster type. Just I just never build it. So and I can't even put it on the station. That's another downside to this coaster type. But with that ranked, I think this is pretty much the final ranking. Let me go into this view here. As you can see, it's pretty spread out reasonably. Uh, just a quick description of what each tier is. S tier coasters are going to be the ones that I either build all the time and love a lot, or ones that I build quite frequently and have historically liked a lot in the past. I mean, these are just ones that I build frequently and enjoy building. And then also the best coaster in the game. A tier is the coasters that I either build a lot in almost every park or really like for some other reason. This being an example of one I build a lot, and then this and this being examples of ones I just enjoy building. In B tier, we've got two types of coasters. We've got the ones that I build pretty frequently, and then the ones that I like but barely ever build, which is, most of the B&Ms here. Down in C tier, this is mostly just coasters that are fine, and I don't build them that often, but I don't think they're terrible. And then D tier is the ones that I never build, and I think they're outdated, and we really, really need a Vekoma flying coaster, the new Gen 1, please. But that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed the tier list, I'm facing the other way. If you enjoyed the tier list, make sure to like and subscribe or whatever, or tell me in the comments about how wrong my opinions are, or tell me in the comments that my opinions are great and I'm correct about everything all the time, which is definitely not true, but that's it for this video, and bye. Oh, and actually one more thing. I am going to be uploading this as a ride ID in case you want to make your own tier lists with this. This is going to be using the Extreme Launch Coaster. It's already going to be pre-placed in S tier for you. The ride ID will be in the description.